good afternoon. So, welcome, everybody. I'm Francesca Fantini. I work in Fusion for Energy, who is one of the organizations behind WBSBF and behind the Women in Big Science. So, first of all, we would like to sincerely thank all the speakers who have accepted our invitation. The organizer of Big Science Business Forum 2024 in Trieste, in particular Cristina Sardilli and Marco Tessarotto for the great support, and all of you for joining us today. So many thanks to Elizabeth Politzer, our expert and moderator, for supporting us in this project, and in particular for preparing the webinar today. I would like to mention the other members of the Women in BSBF, so my friends and colleagues, Arisa Polonatos, Romina Bemelmans, Silvia Bernal, Carmen Casteras, Belen del Cerro, Pilar Rosado, and Nikolai Zangenberg. Okay, so as we say, we all work in the context of big science. We have different profiles, different roles, different duties in our organization, but we have in common a strong passion for big science. So we strongly believe that big science are very fascinating and have a big potential to attract women and girls. Big projects, big science projects have been until now underexplored for the aspects of inclusion and for their positive impact on society. We feel, we are strongly convinced that this ecosystem offers a unique environment to advance gender equality and the human capital by exploring the synergies, the links between the different entities, by combining knowledge and practice, by putting together the public and the private bodies, and as well investment. So the Big Science Business Forum, BSBF, is a main meeting point in Europe for the high technology, for putting together innovation, research infrastructure, industry, and offers so the perfect opportunity for us, because Women in BSBF aims to create a space, a community where the different entities, like say the public and private, research and industry, that operate and are necessary in big science can interact, share experience, define actions together to increase the participation and advancement of women in the big science ecosystem, and then further into the society. So in our first series of events that was hosted by BSBF 2022, there's been a very good participation. And we created the starting meeting point for exchange ideas and practice. So thanks to the support of BSBF 2024, we are repeating the successful initiative. And it starts with this preparatory webinar. And it will continue. In the next weeks, we will launch the call for the award. We are starting preparing the roundtable for Trieste, will be in October 2024. And there is also a novelty, a pilot for a traineeship program, which will be presented later by my colleagues. So on behalf of the organizer, again, thank you very much for being with us today, and look forward for the interesting conversation. I let the floor to Elizabeth for the discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Francesca. That was really very inspiring and ambitious ideas that the group has for the future. I'm Elizabeth Politzer. I'm director of Portia and founder of Gender Summit. Portia does nothing but trying to improve the quality of research by paying attention to equality and diversity issues. So it is my pleasure to be the moderator here for this webinar. My academic background is in biology, physics, and computing, but for the last 20 years of my time, most of my time has been taken with projects that connect quality of research with equality in science. So when I was approached by the FORE team 2 years ago to help improve the participation of women in big science, of course, I jumped at this opportunity because, to my knowledge, that was the very first time that anybody thought of such an idea. And of course, I had to learn very fast what actually big science is. And that is a really exciting thing. And the fact that it's actually an ecosystem of many different organizations. And as Francesca said, it does open up many opportunities to attract women to big science, to join the institutions or join projects or join programs and so on in many different roles. So the aim of this webinar is to gather, it's to explain where we already have been, what we have achieved, and the direction that we are taking. So the award that was introduced in Granada concentrated on the activities that individual organizations are taking. And that was really very nice surprise. We had quite a few proposals submitted for the award, and it was clear that there were some organizations that have taken real leadership in advancing gender equality and diversity in the institutions. And the speakers that we have invited here represent those organizations. They are the leaders in this ecosystem. So my job here will be just keep time and make sure that we can hear as much as possible. And the first thing that I would want to invite the speakers to talk about is very briefly what has happened in the last 2 years in Granada, what kind of activities they have encouraged their organizations to take. And after that, we're going to move to the theme for this webinar, which is really looking outside the individual organizations into projects and into the ecosystem to find out what is it, what are the mechanisms, what are the opportunities to keep on improving the participation of women in big science. So first of all, let me introduce our speakers. So we have Louise Carvalho, who is a program leader on diversity and inclusion and legal advisor at CERN. We have Francesca Primers, who is a full astronomer at ESO and coordinator of the Accessibility, Equal Opportunities and Diversity project within the Horizon 2020, called Opticon RadioNet Pilot Project. We have Thomas Berghofer, who is a senior researcher at DESI and coordinator of the Genera Network. Genera Network is advancing physics institutions to adopt gender equality plans. And we have Meike Flammer, who is a lawyer and diversity officer at European XFL. And finally, Monique Gomez, who is a chair of the Gender Equality Commission at IAC. So I will just go in that order and start with. I will ask Louise Carvalho to give us a brief description what she personally and with her team been doing at CERN. Louise, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and thank you to the organizers for hosting us regularly on this occasion and on this important topic. I might already just speak to the way you kindly introduced me as to say, what have I done personally as a starting point to say that indeed in an organization of this size and with the ambitious project to reach 25% of women employed by CERN by the end of 2025, it is far from just a single person's work. In fact, what has been the success behind the numbers we have seen increasing since putting this project into place in early 2021 is an incremental, but albeit noticeable rise in the percentage of women across the employed members of personnel at CERN. And before one wonders whether this increase has only been in areas that are not STEM related, actually we have separated out the numbers to see where the increase has also been in the STEM areas. And as of the end of last year, which is the last point at which we collect the personnel statistics, we are 1.3% away from reaching 25%. And I think one of the reasons why that has been a success, greater than we expected by this stage, is precisely because we now have an extensive diversity and inclusion officers network. This is a new initiative under the 25 by 25 strategy, within which each department head has nominated at least one, and in one department up to 3, members of its department, who are now referred to as the Diversity and Inclusion Officer, or DIO. And this network of now 18 across CERN meets monthly, chaired by my colleague in the program, Melania Coletta. And in this network, like a community of practice, we exchange regularly what departments are doing to ensure that there is a greater emphasis on gender diversity when it comes to hiring. And I think what has helped, of course, move this forward is that these DIOs report to their department heads. So there's a constant engagement by the senior management, a constant looking into the numbers by that senior management's department board to ensure that there is a greater gender and nationality diversity when it comes to hiring. And the Human Resources Department has created what we just referred to as a recruitment dashboard. And this dashboard tracks from the long list to the hiring stage, so the 5 major steps of the hiring process. What is the gender and nationality ratio at the long list stage? And what does it look like as we move forward to the selection? And what that does is put the mirror very much in front of the hiring manager and the team involved in the process of hiring, which is not actually the Human Resources Department any longer. It's really in the hands of the team doing the hiring, and where they can see that the loss potential, the leaking out of some diversity in gender is happening really on their side. And having that checkpoint along the way is actually forcing the hiring manager teams to be conscious of any bias that might be creeping in toward hiring of a certain gender, or in some cases also nationality, unconsciously. And I think these 2 elements, the senior management engagement, the network itself, and then finally the new dashboard, are 3 aspects of the implementation of 25 by 25 that has given us the positive trend. Lastly, I would say that when it comes to tracking new numbers, when you're looking at improving your gender diversity, we have looked specifically also at the new hires for each year. So rather than only taking the total amount existing at CERN, which means we're also adding in those decades of potentially biased hiring, we're looking also at the gender diversity of just 2023 and of just 2022. And there we see an incredible trend, such that almost all these areas, STEM and non-STEM alike, are above 30% in favor of women in these positions, which means that the new hiring now, the people who are consciously hiring for the new population, have shown an incredible increase in recognizing the benefits of a gender diverse STEM and non-STEM environment.
Wonderful. Thank you, Louise. It's really always so good to hear some positive impacts of interventions and development of best practices. Gosh, I've really good news to hear this. Thank you. Okay, well, the next one is Francesca Primas, slightly a different organization.
Yes, definitely.
Approach.
And it's a pleasure to be here, not only because of a topic that we are discussing, but also because I am a product of a University of Trieste, so I'm very well connected actually to my home region, where the next BSBF actually will be organized. So let me just start by introducing ESO. So ESO stands for the European Southern Observatory. We are an intergovernmental organization like CERN, but a science and technology organization in astronomy. So we design, construct, and operate, I think what is today is the most powerful set of ground-based facilities for astronomy. Reflecting on what has happened during the last 2 years since the last BSBF meeting in Granada, I mean, I'm very happy to say that ESO has recruited, a bit more than a year ago, has recruited the first diversity and sustainability and diversity officer, and who has taken over the chairship, let's say, of the 2 main groups that were dealing with this type of topic. So, I mean, he's supported by the Diversity and Inclusion Committee and by the Environment Protection Group. Now, in more detail, I think, or more specifically, at the time of the Granada meeting, ESO had just finalized its diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. And therefore, a lot of work, or most of the work, has focused actually on working on what this plan has promised or has decided, has described as its targets. So we have been working specifically on defining a new mentoring program, which will target specifically female staff, at least at first. We have carried out a preliminary gender pay gap study, which now will be followed up by an external consultancy agency that will guide us actually to go a little bit deeper into the analysis and to understand. And this will put us, I think, in a good position, because we will be ready for when the new European Sustainability Report standard will come in place, which is actually upcoming. So it will be very soon. And we have worked very intensively on the area of diverse abilities, meaning that the Diversity and Inclusion Committee has met with local associations representing people with disabilities. They came over, actually, especially here in Garching in Germany, where we have the headquarters, and to visit the premise, to help us actually to define, or to tell us, to give us some feedback, actually, what could be improved and what we would need to improve. And we have recently established a new in-house network of disability contact persons. These are volunteers from different areas of organization, from more technical area to more scientific areas. And these people will act as contact people, as contact person, as contact points. And we hope that in this way, we will learn more, we will learn together, and we will be able actually to help and to understand what the needs are. And work has continued on the hiring guidelines, which we have described many times already in the past. I mean, we have introduced this diversity mapping, which every group or department that has a new position to offer, I mean, has to go through this exercise of drawing their own diversity mapping to understand actually what they need and to make them reflect on what they need. And of course, work is continuing in order to improve. And as Louise just told us, I mean, we also have our 5 critical steps in the hiring process, and we are monitoring that very closely. So,
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francesca. I like the idea and actually the stress on disability, because that's very frequently just not included when people talk about gender identity, and not so much about all the other diversities. So this is really very good. And it's all very refreshing to see all those best practices being developed. And I like the approach of the technical approach, that we have to have some real information and data and evidence in order to see that all the interventions are actually having some impact. Okay, my next speaker is Thomas Berghofer, whom I know from Genera Project. Thomas, you are representing us yet another different organization. So can we hear from you? What have you managed to do?
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. I am coordinating the Genera network, which is a network of more than 40 physics research institutions. This was founded from an EU-funded project, as you mentioned, Elizabeth, the Genera project. So it is interesting work that we are doing, and most of the speakers that I invited today are part of this network. So, right. We were really thrilled by receiving this BSBF recognition award, which we of course celebrated with the network. Yeah, and fortunately, it came at the right time, this award, because we were in the situation that we had to justify internally our involvement as coordinating team of Genera. It's quite some work. It's nothing that you can do in an hour per week. And our management wanted to know what are we doing and how are we doing and why is it needed, because the main job of the Genera project was done. We have our gender equality plan, but okay, this brought us in the situation that we could argue that of course the plan is not when you have a gender equality plan, the job is not done. Actually, the work then starts, and the idea of keeping the network together was really great. It's a very active network. I could speak for hours about this lovely network. We have monthly online meetings and meet in person once a year, or maybe 2 times in the future. We will see. The main task is sharing good practice. So the best practice, I don't know. We had a longer discussion whether best practice exists or it's good practice. There is always a need to keep the attraction high, to not leave the interest of the partners, because then the network may exist for a while and then break apart. So this is the main task of the coordinator, and to keep this attraction high. So we are trying all kinds of formats of get-togethers. These online hour we have each month, so it's changing in its format, and and it's working for now. Yeah, maybe 10 years, right? So our main focus in the moment is on young scientists. So this is not new. We discussed this already a couple of years ago, but we continued in this direction. The network itself comprises only a few young scientists. So it's more that the seniors come together. So we have to define a way to get the young people attracted to the network and bring them in and do something for them. So we have developed gender equality related workshops and lectures that one can include in career development activities. And we are all trying out what works, what does not work. And this is a very interesting endeavor. And currently we have started with a lecture series on gender equality related topics. And the first one was a great success. We had more than 100 young scientists coming together in such a format like Zoom. And yeah, the next one is next week. And afterwards we will then yeah, try to understand what we learned from this series of lectures and all the feedback that we get. We will yeah, analyze to yeah, develop the next activities from this. Thank you. I think this is enough for the moment.
Lovely. Thank you, Thomas. Yes. So it's good to know that we're all working together, including the people already represented in this particular webinar. I think we have to pull all our knowledge and energies together. Okay, the next person I will invite to say something about the organization is Melke Flammer. When we met first time about 2 years ago, I mean, I wasn't quite clear what was happening in XFL, but having spoken to Melke recently, it was really quite impressive how much has been happening in XFL. So Melke, it's your floor.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth and the team, for having me here today, and good afternoon to everybody. Indeed, at the time when the award in Granada was given, we had only recently established a GDP, and also I had only been in my position as half 20 hours diversity officer for a few months, having had already 10 years of experience in gender equality and diversity work, but only next to my usual job as a lawyer. And I have to say, our facility, the European XFEL, is very different from, for example, CERN. We are a user facility, and our main focus is on providing scientific and technical support to our users. What we have done since the Granada conference is, as Elizabeth already said, quite a few things. We organized, for example, we did some outreach. We discovered we have a problem in recruiting female engineers. So we had organized a Europe-wide webinar with 6 excellent young female speakers to promote working in a big science facility also for engineers. It's obvious for scientists that these are interesting employers, but not necessarily for engineers. So we went to technical universities and so on to promote this. Then also we looked at our numbers, female representation, gender balance numbers, and we discovered actually we are not doing so bad at the level of regular PhD or postdoc scientists, and also not as in the managerial at the management board level. We actually have 2 out of 5 directors are female. But we are lacking as female leaderships, group leaders throughout the facility. So we decided now we will implement a female leadership training, dedicated training to promote or to develop our staff to fill these positions once they get free, or we are at the moment also at the stage of creating subgroup leader level positions, specifically also for women. Another initiative is to make our recruitment process more, to remove unconscious biases from ads, and also have more objective criteria for the recruitment process. We also did something in the area of childcare to promote our parents in their career. We have established an emergency childcare service that supports our people, especially, for example, if we have in some cases we have 2 parents who are on shifts, and if that happens and there's an emergency case, we organize a professional childcare that's paid by the company, and also we started providing childcare for conferences so that people can also attend in the afternoon, or external people can bring their kids. And we have introduced 5 extra childcare days, in addition to the 10 that's given to every employee in Germany. And another interesting initiative is that we are now implementing a training on the German Equal Opportunities Act. That gives employees, that informs them about the way they should behave in terms of, not discriminating anybody based on gender, sexual orientation, and so on, but also gives them at hand what are the mechanisms to act if they are being harassed internally, and also what are legal steps they could take. And last but not least, we are at the moment trying to implement a re-entry position for parents after parental leave to enable them to get back to the labor market, and also discussing and giving at the side of selected excellent female scientists in our facility an assistant, a PhD or a master student who could support them during the pregnancy and their first years of with small children in continuing the academic career with publications and so on. So that's currently being discussed. It's not yet, but it's a very concrete discussion, let's put it this way. Yeah, so that's actually the most important things that are currently happening at XFEL. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Maike. Yes, I really like the idea of women returners. It's been done in the UK for many years, and there's one organization specializes on it, and they have a 99% success rate in returning women to science careers. So that's a really worth the initiative. Okay, and finally, we have a Monique Gomez, again from completely different organization in their big science ecosystem. Monique, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to speak about what we do at AEC. AEC is the Instituto de Astrofísica de Canarias. So we are a research center in astrophysics, but we have, like ESO, we have also the part of instrumentation as we develop instruments for telescope. And so we have scientists and we have also engineers. We are in Spain, and in Spain we have a law about gender equality since 2007. So we are obliged to have gender equality plans since this law. So we are now in our third gender equality plan, but preparing already the fourth one because regulations have changed at the national level and also at the European level, and we have to have a gender equality plan adapted to the new regulations. So since 2022, we focused on gender equality training for all the staff at AEC because it was one of the goals of the third equality plan. And we designed a gender training based on needs detected through a survey. So staff participated in the detection. It's a plan designed until 2025. And some training actions are at a very basic level about gender equality concepts and prevention of sexual harassment and so on, inclusive communication, bias, and so on. And some are very specific for different groups, like managers, PIs, scientists, technologists, PhD students, and so on. We indeed in 2023 we organized 2 training sessions for the director and his advisors, and it was an important thing for us because although it was the same training for scientists, but a condensed one because they are very busy people and they can't spend a lot of time with this thing. But they did it, so it was a very good thing for us to be able to organize that. We have since the beginning of the gender equality plan, we have a strong action in communication outside and inside. So our communication department is involved. Sometimes it leads the action, or sometimes it only coordinate the actions. But we have a lot of actions to make visible women scientists for young people and especially for young girls. And well, right now we are involved in the preparation of the 4th gender equality plan. As we are only a gender equality commission, we have not a lot of house to. We do something else. Our main work is not being in the commission, but doing our work outside, not gender equality work. So we have to design the 4th gender equality plan. We have a technical assistance from a specialized firm in gender equality. And it's great because the new regulations are very specific about how you have to do the diagnosis and also the actions you have to implement. And we have to do that because it's a law, so we have to do it like that. And well, I think that that's what we are doing now. Yes, yeah, that's all. I think it's enough.
Lovely, thank you, Monique. So there's two ways. One way is to have a national law that forces all organizations to have gender equality plans, but also we have a Horizon Europe, of course, that expects all benefiting organizations to have a gender equality plan. This is a unique experiment in Europe. So I don't know how many organizations will participate in Horizon Europe, but there'll be certainly thousands of them. So we have a chance to change the cultures for make the necessary structural change. Okay, thank you so much for your brief descriptions of what actually has been achieved and the activities that have taken place. We have an audience, and I have to ask the audience to pay now, and they have the opportunity to provide feedback in the chat on what you heard and also what we're going to discuss next, which is really looking outside the individual organizations to look at the mechanism and opportunities to improve gender equality and diversity across the Big Science ecosystem. So we have Aris who is watching the chat, and please post your messages and your comments there. I'm sorry that you are all muted, but they just would be too difficult to manage everybody. But we really would like your feedback because this webinar is a preparation for the event in Trieste. And your comments would be really welcome. If we cannot answer your comments or your questions during the webinar, there's going to be opportunity to submit them through a survey that will be announced on the WBSBF website. Also, you can send us an email, and we are very happy to organize bilateral meetings online to discuss any details. So please just use the chat as much as you can. So now our next part of this is to try to understand from the perspective of the organizations that we have here, represented here, what is it that can be done through the kind of a cooperation agreements or projects or programs that they have, how we can then tap into this mechanism and harness the capacity of Big Science projects to also be part of this change, this structural change. So I shall follow the same order and maybe try with Louise first, because actually CERN does have Big Science projects, some of them really, really big. And so maybe there's some ideas that you could share with us, Louise, about how one could use this resource.
I think that a bit reflecting on my earlier comment, but I can only re-emphasize is that when you're part of such a large organization like this one, CERN, even the specific experiments have their own, I would suggest, inner culture, and a single program or D&I practitioner can't know as well the specificities of each culture within an experiment as the people inside. So you need to create a network of allies or promoters or influencers, whatever word works well, not only at the worker bee level, but as well up the chain within the hierarchy, so that you have both the leadership giving space for this need for change, as Elizabeth, you describe it. That means making things like the gender equality plan, if you have one, visible, so that the leadership understands the relevance and importance of it, but also feedback the numbers. It's also not enough just to announce a project to be excited. It's a science organization is driven by good data, as you mentioned, one of our speakers. So putting the data in as simple and yet effective format, so that you don't send around a 10-page document, but as one slide, as we do. We have a single slide that shows the arc of improvement, and this makes for very digestible, easily sendable, and easily promoted to encourage more trends in this area. Communication is really a key in keeping the engagement of your diverse cultures in a big science organization.
Yes, I think you lay some very, very long time ago, and we just started working on that towards it. There's a project called GenSet, and the issue of sexual harassment in institutions came up. And I was sent emails from I think young researchers at CERN saying that actually it's happening there, and so there have to be measures that actually, because people come from countries where it's perfectly okay to harass women, but it's illegal in Switzerland, and so it was important to make sure. And yes, and CERN has taken action immediately then. So there's quite a unique environment at CERN, I think, with all sort of international people coming from different countries, different cultures, and somehow to make them think in the same way about equality and diversity. Okay, Francesca, I think we want to hear from you, because you have quite a different way of operating, especially outside Europe.
Yes, exactly. So, in fact, I mean, this question is not trivial at all. I mean, it's actually quite challenging to answer, because, first of all, let me just state what I consider a big science project, right? Big science project can go from what ESO is building now is the extremely large telescope, which is not really building it in-house, but is building it through a consortium of institutes. Or it could also be a very large science collaborations, for instance, and just to understand actually what is the ecosystem in this large science collaboration, which I think that is also very important, and we should not diminish the importance actually of these collaborations. So during the last 10, 15 years in astronomy has witnessed a major change in the way that the community is approaching the scientific research. So we moved, basically we moved from really a small teams type of research to building more and more complex and bigger facilities that have basically generated or even required larger and larger science collaborations in order to build, to operate, and also to harness then the data that these facilities are producing. And I think that there is a very positive aspect about that, in a sense that I think that each of these science collaboration, each of these big science projects have EDI topics on their agenda, and they are discussing it very lively. They are organized possibly in a rather independent way or individual way. So they have a lot of subgroups, they have a lot of volunteers. They are all very keen in making the environment very inclusive, very diverse, and based on full respect. They have code of conduct. So I think that this all looks very positive. For instance, when you introduced me, I mean, you mentioned this Opticon RadioNet pilot project from Horizon 2020. This is a huge enterprise, but were two big projects that were supported again from the EU for the past decades, let's say, the Opticon on one side and the RadioNet on the other side, which belongs basically, they deal with two different wavelength ranges, I mean, in astrophysics, so from the optical or from the radio domain. They actually join forces, and this project is really to provide access to an integrated set of research infrastructures in Europe, and to be as open and inclusive as possible. So, for instance, this project, of course, it's supported and funded by the EU. And I think that I would use the word therefore. I think that there was a package, a joint action, well specified about accessibility, equal opportunities, and inclusion and diversity. So, and then this is how we are working. We are trying to implement the best practices, and I will come back to that just in a minute. However, I think that there is also, so if on one side we are already harnessing from these individual discussions and all these big projects or science collaboration discussing EDI topics, I think that this big project, unless they are fully sponsored and funded by one single entity, like it could be the EU, and in that case, of course, the EU could impose strict guidelines about gender equality and so on. Usually, these big projects, they get their funding from several national sources. This can be university, institutes, laboratories, organizations. Sometimes they appeal to their national government to get extra funding for some specific projects. And therefore, and each of them comes with its own bag, let's say, of DEI prescriptions, guidelines, best practices, and so on. So I think that it is challenging, if not even disputable, if an organization like ISO, for instance, which has just a project supervisory role, and if it is at the very receiving end, let's say, so we receive basically the completed facility, we take it over, and then we are fully responsible for its implementation, for it offering it to the community at large, and for operating it for the next 2 decades, for instance. If we have any right to impose anything about, for instance, gender equality during the design and construction phase that is carried out by this consortia of different institutions. What we do instead, I think, and we can, because we have a full control of that, is, for instance, access to telescope time is what actually keeps astrophysical research going, at least most of it. And this is one area where a lot of progress has been made, I think, in the last years, because we have been able to ensure gender parity, if not even an gender imbalance, but in favor of women on the review panels. And so we are 50-50, if not, as I said, 55-45 in favor of women astronomers, where we have a very large diversity in terms of nationality and in terms of seniority. So we are trying to bring in also early career scientists or young researchers. And we have implemented dual anonymous reviews in many astronomical and astrophysical facilities. And these now we are analyzing the data, so the results will come out, will be published soon. They do show and a specific increase, a very important increase in the success rates to win telescope time, for instance, for early career scientists. So taking away all the information that is absolutely not necessary in terms of affiliation, which country you are from, the principal investigator, who is the team behind a research project. What counts is really what they want to do scientifically in order to make progress. And this has actually brought some numbers back to normal, I would say, or at least they are reflecting significantly better the scientific preparation and the scientific background of the applicants. So I think that this could be one possible action, and we could explore further, of course, the space of the domain, how much we can do, how much we can push, how much we can impose on the people actually who are building and putting the money, because then in the end is really about a lot of funding that goes into these big projects.
Right, thank you, Francesca. I remember during General Project, Thomas remarking about the inequalities in access to the infrastructure resources, and that there was something that one should look at it from a gender perspective, wasn't it, Thomas? So would you like to say something more about what would be possible to do a part of the Genera network to use the DESI as the kind of a part of the ecosystem in which DESI operates?
Yeah, I was thinking about what can I contribute here, but it's pretty clear actually, because my team is involved in setting up a new large infrastructure, the Einstein telescope. So we are involved in legal and financial issues, and we have a look at how this planning is been done by the teams at the very beginning of, or not the very beginning, in a very early planning phase. So this is a multi-billion euros project. And so what we see is that this building or planning is still old school. So the gender equality is not on the menu card at this time. So of course we wrote a proposal for European funding for preparatory phase, and everybody checked box the gender equality plan is present. But this was actually all. And yeah, we are really looking through our Genera classes and watching the scenery, what is going on, and when is the right moment to say, hey, you have to take gender equality more serious. But the difficulty is from inside, it's always difficult to trigger something in this direction. It's better when it comes from the outside. And here, we have seen that now this planning team is recognizing that the activities of the BSBF. And at some point, I think the action should be, come closer to BSBF. And here you get the women from BSBF. And, and we have some recipes or whatever for bringing you into the right mood to also implement gender equality and diversity at the planning of this project, that all comes in the right direction, so that we really make the move. And I mean, in the moment, it looks for us that the last 60 or 70 years, nothing has changed. So when DAISY was built in the 60 years ago, I guess the same discussion was going on, mainly driven by men and so on. So in this domain, the change has not happened yet. But we need a kind of trigger to change it. So this was my contribution on the big science project. And of course, we can help from Genera side, but best is, this demand comes from the project to the network.
Okay, well, thank you, Thomas. Okay, so then the Women in Big Science Business Forum team will have quite a big task ahead of them, and certainly planning for Trieste, how to use the BSBF as the kind of part of that ecosystem to encourage projects. I think that might be a really good idea to explore. Okay, so Meike, we chatted about these possibilities, and yours is a completely different setup. So maybe you have some reflections on how to be a part of this ecosystem.
Right. As I outlined before, we are a user facility. So most of our business is hosting big user consortia composed of scientists from different institutions, often different countries and often different gender, obviously, and also of users and experimental teams. And I was thinking how we could influence gender equality here in this aspect. And the problem is the user consortia, they get beam time, obviously very expensive beam time at XFEL, and they have to go through a peer review process, and that is exclusively, the beam time is exclusively given by scientific excellence. So it is and will in the future be very difficult to have here some gender equality criteria as a selection criteria for getting beam time at XFEL. Also, the teams are usually composed of different gender. Obviously, the women are less represented usually in the user consortia, but we have our instruments and the experiment are so specific that you can't just say, get me some more women, because it's a certain number of experts that get together in a proposal, and we can't simply say, get me some more women here. So, but what we were thinking about is if we would now set up an internship or a fellowship program for master or for PhD students who could come to XFEL for, let's say, half a year, and to really get a training in the different instrument groups, on the instruments, become experts on certain instruments. They would continue their studies, and at the end, in a few years, they would be very very well suited for becoming future users at XFEL, because they have this specific knowledge of our instruments. So that was an idea or initiative we had. It's not yet, we are at the moment looking at funding and how we can implement it, but that was an idea how to influence this ecosystem of our users and user consortia. And then we are, of course, together with CERN and with ESO, with Luis and Francesca, we are part of the Aero Forum, which I don't know if you also want to consider. This is, you could probably also consider as a big science, as a fusion of representatives of big science projects or institutions, and we are coming together on a regular basis and exchanging best practices, and also had a few common projects, such as very interestingly, that we let the children of our employees paint female scientists. So you can imagine the outcome was very interesting. And we published this all on our websites. And this year we are hosting, XFEL is hosting, chairing the Aero Forum. And in June, we will have come together in Hamburg for a meeting of the subgroup on diversity, equality, and inclusion. And obviously, gender equality will also be in our agenda, an exchange on best practices, and also diverse and disabilities, which is not a topic of this conference, I know, but this is also what we have made one important topic for our get together in Hamburg. Then also I recently organized on the event of the Women's Day a big meeting that's mostly composed of institutions from the Hamburg area. There's a UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, and we had the director coming and the gender equality representative coming to XFEL, people from DESI, from the University of Hamburg, gender equality representatives, and we all discussed on several topics. And there was very lively, a very successful event with more than 70 people attending in person, and composed not only of XFEL employees, but also employees of MPE, of Helmholtz, and we even had a few school students who came and participated in the discussion. It's very interesting. So that's mostly what I can contribute from XFEL side.
Wonderful, but you haven't mentioned the Attract program, which I think XFL is managing.
No, I have to. It's managed by CERN. XFL is participating, and that time when we introduced it, we asked the managers. I asked the managers to introduce a clause that all the beneficiaries, they should have a gender equality and diversity plan in place in order to participate. I think nowadays, I mean, everybody needs to have this anyhow, but that time it wasn't yet, I think, wasn't yet mandatory.
Yes, I was interested in that. I was interested in the track program because I noticed that about 60% of the projects funded were motivated by applications in health or environment, and yet among the PIs, I think only less than 20% were women. And of course, in natural sciences and life sciences, majority of PhDs go to women. Yep. So I thought that was really like a one way or another way of using this as an opportunity to promote engagement by women. So what I'm getting the messages here is the importance of networks. Yes, they have to be networks that are very specific with particular missions, in mainly sharing knowledge and best practice. So I think that is part of this ecosystem that could be how to manage the opportunities to advance women. Okay, Monique, something. You already mentioned the importance of the national law to actually help make advances in attracting women.
I think it's very important that national laws and of course EU laws help us with that. If it's mandatory, it's mandatory. Okay, so it's no, you can't discuss. But also money to implement, and there is nothing free in life. So gender equality is not free too. And it's true that Genera project was something was very important at IC, because we could show that if we had the money, we could advance and make things happen, even if we don't have. Well, during the project, we had an expert in gender equality, so it was paid, of course, by the EU funds, but we demonstrate that really with a person dedicated to the implementation of the plan, on the gender equality plan, things happen. So it's important to have money. And in fact, the project Genera at IC had these consequences, that we have a budget, a good budget, since the project Genera finished, for gender equality. So policies, laws, and of course money. And regarding big science projects, of course, in astronomy, there are many big science projects, and IAC is involved in some of them. And in the past, sometimes some scientists came to me to tell me, well, our leader in the project is asking for these things about gender equality, and well, I could help a bit. But what surprised me, in a good sense, was that someone was looking for gender equality in these big science projects, and generally it was because the package was led by a woman. But doesn't matter. What is good is that they really took it in account. And I know of another project. A scientist came to me 2 years ago and asking me to help him with a proposal to, I think it was to EU, but I'm not sure. And his astrophysics, he works in astroparticle theory. And he wanted to include many things about gender equality and diversity in his proposal. And well, I tried to help him, but he did the proposal, and he told me that it was rejected. Not only, but in part, one of the things that was not accepted or not was discussed was the topic of gender equality, because I think he put all the actions maybe in a work package. I don't know if it was exclusively for that, or if it was with other things. And they told him that well, he should change things. So well, I think he didn't get the funding. I don't know if he has got funding from anywhere else, but he continues with his project, and it's a project that involves IC, a group at IC, but many other groups outside in other institutions. And he has really, they are very involved in gender equality. They do a lot of training for young scientists, and they work a lot on the gender balance in speakers, invited speaker, attendees, scientific organizing committee, local organizing committee, and so they try to facilitate the participation of people. For example, they provide care service for children or adults that are which scientists could have in charge, you know, not only children. Sometimes it's not a children, it's a child. It's sometimes it's an adult that is you have in charge. And also they have several women scientists that are very relevant in the field. They invite them to talk, seminars, and to make their work visible, of course, but also to offer reference to younger women. And the thing that he is a man, and he is always very, very involved in this question of gender equality and diversity. He really wants to advance in that, and well, it's really a good thing. And I think that regarding what Thomas says about Daisy and the people who maybe are now, some of the staff may be a bit of an old generation. What I can say that at IC we are seeing the change of generation, and now the generation after those who were born in the late 50s or 60s, they are retiring slowly, but they are retiring. And the new generation, those who are now 50 or so, they are different because they have been involved in their children care, because their women were not at home, they were working outside. So we are seeing clearly a change at IC, and I think maybe it can happen in other institutions.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we have. I want to just take a little bit of time to because we're using BSBF as this is preparation for BSBF. Yes, to how to make an impact during the BSBF. There's going to be a roundtable session. It's going to be broadcasted, streamed across everywhere. So it will be important that we have a very strong arguments and examples of best practice. So maybe just a sort of like a few words from those who could think about it quickly. What would be the role of the BSBF? How one could make an impact at BSBF? I think Meike, I might start with you because you already mentioned something to me about that.
Yeah, I would like to encourage organizers to, in addition to this 1.5 hours meeting we are having on the 4th, I think, to hold some satellite meetings on different dedicated topics, because I think we should really take advantage of being all having so many inspiring gender equality representatives together at one place. So I think it's a bit a waste of talent or time to not to have more satellite meetings. And one thing I would like to propose, or I was thinking what could be interesting topics, obviously there's many. I think one thing we could discuss would, for example, be the implications of the introduction of artificial intelligence in our big science institutions on gender equality. And yeah, I have several other topics in my mind, and if you need, I'm happy to co-organize such a meeting and also make maybe some contribution to that meeting and in terms of content. So thanks.
Any other volunteer to make a comment on this particular aspect? Thomas, you look like you might want to say something.
Yes. I think BSBF should continue with the awards. First, I thought, what shall I do with such an award? It's not associated with any money, but the BSBF is a big stage, and making use of this stage and present good examples of large institutes or projects doing well with gender equality is a brilliant idea. And yeah, please continue.
Yes, very good. Yes, the conditions are going to be revised, especially for networks this time, because we didn't really pay that much attention about how different networks are from our established institutions. So that's going to be there. Okay, Aris, are there anything in the chat, or everybody is so fascinated by the discussion they are not putting anything into a chat?
No. So hi everyone, and thank you for your input. And Elizabeth, thank you for steering the discussion. We actually have two questions that remain unanswered. One is regarding the Attract program, and I was actually writing to Mike as we speak. Participant would like to have the link to get more information about what is the Attract program. That is one of the questions we got. And there is another question that we got from a company that is 100% run and operates with women. It's Silvia Matos that has put the question in the chat. So she says, we are a 100% owned company with diversity projects in place. We've already worked as supplier to CERN, ALMA, FRE, Max Planck, but it's very difficult in the selection. It will be important to strengthen the importance of considering companies with diversity and inclusion projects in the selection. Louise from CERN has actually replied in the chat saying, yes, it would be our next frontier to bring diversity into the consideration of evaluating procurement contracts. Perhaps the other members of the panel may offer their opinion on that. And these are the two questions we have still open. Thank you.
So I'm Francesca. So maybe I can just add something. I believe ETISO has already started to go down this path. So I fully agree. Actually, this is what we need to do. That was also a point that I raised when I was talking about the issues, right? What can we do on imposing something to our consortia? I mean, that we are not controlling possibly the money. And I think that procuring, and when we make the call for tenders, there should be some clear statements about how much we appreciate diversity and inclusion, and then try to find the right and the proper legal formulation, let's say, to state that. So I'm fully backing up, I mean, Louise's reply, and I fully agree with a comment that was made in the chat. I think that is extremely important that. And I believe that we started, especially in Chile, but it's something that needs to be further exploited for sure.
Anybody else? No. Okay, so we have one very important part is the introduction of the traineeship scheme. And it's a pilot. It is just, the idea has just started and it's going to be worked on, but I think we would like to introduce at least the whole thinking behind it and why it is needed. And I think, is it Pilar who's going to speak about this?
Sorry, we just got another question. Pilar, we got one more question. Apologies. From Lucy van der Tas. How does the board see the current backlash in many communities, Italian and Dutch academia, Andrew Tate in the UK, against preferential treatment for women?
Okay, that is a really big question, and I think it's not just here; it's also in the United States, in Canada. And when it is really, really annoying, it's when it is made by academics, yes, who work in a privileged positions and claim that this is against their academic freedom. Yes, I think there is an academic freedom index. They monitor 179 countries. They have a particular criteria. They use nearly 2,500 experts to examine the academic freedom in different countries. And definitely UK, Sweden, US, and Canada are not among the countries that have no academic freedom, okay? So I think the pushback is there, and I think we have to recognize it, but I think it has to be really also challenged, because it is, you really have to take a realistic view, okay? And in Sweden, the pushback was on the grounds that it's the government that required public institutions to have a gender equality plans, yes? Well, I come from Poland, all right? So I think academic freedom obviously now exists in Poland. It didn't exist before. And I think one has to be really very careful when people argue against EDI, yes, what kind of arguments they are using and where they're coming from. But it is an incredibly important issue, and I'm glad that someone asked that. Okay, that's it, Aris, or is there something else popped up now? So, okay, let's just hear for the traineeship.
I think it's Sylvia. Okay.
Yes,
Sylvia.
Francesca, yes, I would like to mention something now that Elizabeth mentioned my name. Well, first, that it will be Silvia Bernal who will shortly explain about the traineeship. But taking advantage that there was this question on public procurements, I just would like to add that Fusion for Energy is starting to add sustainability criteria in our public procurement procedure. So in the selection and or award criteria, we are starting to check environmental matters and also gender diversity and equality matters. So we are starting, but we are going to, in our view, I guess, in the good track. And I give the floor to Silvia. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pilar. I will be just presenting very briefly the traineeship scheme, which is actually a new initiative of WBSBF, which can further contribute to its mission and going a step further on the promotion of the gender equality in big science projects. This is, as mentioned by Francesca, this is a pilot project which will only be possible with your collaboration. And how can you collaborate? Well, the collaboration will be done through the allocation of the training position to WBSBF. An important thing is to take into account is that there is no dedicated budget assigned to this initiative. So this call for interest we are launching now here is to allocate or to make available one of your positions within your training program and label it as WBSBF traineeship. However, the training shall be performed and ruled under your own rules in terms of performance, management, and coordination of the trainees. The selection process of the trainees shall be done according to the selection and award criteria defined by WBSBF. We are currently working on this, on how to select the trainees and how we are going to award the training. But the idea is that once this is concluded, we will call for a meeting with those entities, those organizations who might be interested, and we will have a dedicated session when we will just let you know how we have conceived this idea. There are many benefits on allocating a training under this WBSBF initiative. This is very briefly. I don't know if there are specific questions, or it will be good if your questions are sent via email, so we can just pull up all of them, and then in the session we can just share and address all of them. There will be a question on the survey where you will be asked whether you will be interested in this idea, in this initiative, and if you click yes, then you will be contacted for this session. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, so please, we will encourage everybody out there in the ecosystem, in particular industry, because I know that industry has been actually making big progress on adopting EDI policies and activities. So it will be really good to have more opportunities. It's, as I said, it is a pilot, so we really would welcome any feedback, because especially that the way that each traineeship will be implemented will be according to the rules of the providing organization. So people have their own special maybe criteria or requirements. So yes, so please let us know, and we can organize bilateral meetings to sort out any details with whoever would like to offer a traineeship. Yes, it is a way to demonstrate that big science offers many different career pathways, career opportunities, and to attract young people, students, to see big science as a career destination for them. Yes, so and it doesn't have to be just in a technical field, but it can be in any kind of a field that actually is required to deliver big science efficiently and effectively. Okay, is there anybody who would like to make a comment? Otherwise, I will pass the floor to Belan, who is actually representing the Big Science Business Forum here and has been really active in Granada and now with Trieste. So maybe she would like to tell us something about how we're progressing towards having Big Science Business Forum as an entity, you know, taking on the gender equality issues.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elizabeth. We are now passing the torch to Trieste edition. I think that, first of all, I want to thank a lot to the audience because we are really happy with the interest of this webinar. I think that more than 100 people were registered today. I think that this has been a small appetizer of what is being prepared for Women in Big Science in Trieste. I think that we hope to see you all in person in October. Just maybe to remind you that, as Elizabeth mentioned, after this webinar, we will send you a survey for receiving your feedback about what has been presented today. And we encourage you to reply because that will help us to better prepare the Trieste edition. It's important for us to receive your feedback. Thanks a lot. That's all from my side, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. Thank you to my speakers who are very, very well prepared. Didn't overrun the time, which is wonderful, very much to the point. That was excellent. We have recorded the session, so we can have a transcript of it for sharing among us, so we'll remember what was said. Francesca Fantini, time for you to say something also.
Thank you very much, everybody. So it was really a pleasure, and to work all together in Trieste. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, everybody. Well done.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.